Hey guys, so I'm here to talk about the Forge API, or one of the two of the Forge APIs, the BIM 360 API and the Data Management API. Specifically, the request we're going to quickly look at is the going to be on the BIM 360 API, and I'll talk a little bit about those and kind of show you the differences. But what you see here is Postman, and I use this to make API requests. So to request from the Forge website or the Forge API for data. So I'll make a request with a URL for information, and it responds to me with a JSON file. Currently, what you see here is a patch request. So there's different types of requests. There's a whole bunch of them. You can kind of see that here. I can't speak to most of these. I'm not totally sure. The delete one's interesting. I really want to look into this because kind of on a different topic, but kind of along the same line is you see here. This is a project number. This request is what it's doing is reaching out to BIM 360. It's finding a specific project and it's patching the job number. So it's updating the job number. It could be patching it with a new job number. So it's there's already an existing one. It's patching it with this new one or replacing it with a new number, or there's no number and it's putting a number up there. So that's what this one's doing. And one of the things is there's a variety of information we can track. We can see if people are active. We can see if they're inactive. We can see if they're pending or if they haven't been in BIM 360 for months. Those are some of the things that we can leverage to figure out if a user is actively using it, and then we can purge those users. So delete is something I'm trying to look into to see if we can actually delete users. Or projects, things like that, or archive projects, just stuff. But anyways, there's different patch requests. There's a whole bunch of different ones. The ones I can speak to the most are patch, post, and get. Get is when you get a response, like a JSON file. Usually you get a response with all of these, but a get specifically, it'll push the URL, and you get back just a response. It's not changing anything to BIM 360. So you may get for example, all the users from BIM 360 may get a response for that, and then that has a whole bunch of different data for each user, and you can store that in an Excel document, or you can port that directly over to Power BI, leverage it in there, and then start to connect that with other data, dump it into a SQL database, whatever you want. A post is when you post information up to BIM 360. It will give you a response as well for whatever it's doing. So if you're posting, like, for example, if you're creating an entirely new project, which is something you can do really easy, which I have right there, is post project. And so you post a project, you just need some information about that project, and then it'll go ahead and create a new project. Give you a response that kind of just says, hey, this is what we put in, and it successfully went through. Patch, again, is it's going up there. It is either adding to a value that was previously empty, or a already filled in value, or something that already has a value in it, and then changing it to this new value. And then it gives you a response back. In this example, it actually gives you a response of like all the data that project has. So like the name, the address, the contract type, just all the different information that's up there. It'll give it back as a response, and then in that response is the job number or project number, and then you can verify it there to see if it actually updated it. Up here is the URL that actually pushes that request. So what it does is it sends this information. It needs the account, and this structure. If you look at, and I'll show you the documentation in a second, but the structure of this is important, and the documentation outlines that pretty good. It'll tell you what it needs to look like, but what I can speak to the most is right after this version 1. It'll show you there's an account, and then this account ID. This account ID it's a variable that that I've set up that'll because the account ID, unless you have multiple accounts, it's always going to be the same. In my case, where I work, the account ID is always the same. It's also a number that that I can show you. It's just because anybody that's invited to the project will see that when they're out on BIM 360. It's a number. It's the same number. It's up there on the URL. This makes it easier because now it's just a variable and it's always in there. I can just copy this, and then here's that path variable, and this is linked. So you can see hovering over this currently, it shows the variable, or what is contained in that variable. So it has the number, which starts with 33F. You can see it, and what I can do is just globally change that, and it'll affect every single one of my my requests. And by doing that, I don't have to go in and change all of them. After that, we have projects, and then we have so for this particular request, projects, it needs that information. If you were like updating maybe user information, you would need the user ID, but not a project ID. So this number after projects is the project ID. This is, again, if somebody you invited externally from your project and they were to look up the URL, you would see project slash the project number. What keeps this kind of secure is some of the access tokens and some of the security stuff behind. It's when it makes that request, before it does that, you have to authenticate first, and then you can make these requests. But without that, it will just fail. So if you were to take exactly what you would see here and to send that, it would fail, and you wouldn't have any luck. I'm going to share with you a pretty great article. It's what I 6 months ago read for the first time getting into Forge, because when all this happened, we needed to push to BIM 360 as quickly as possible. So I looked as much as I could into Forge. How could we automate all of it so that we could quickly get things moving? And this article was great, so I'll share that in 1 second. And when so back to this, when I authenticate this, and then all I have to do is come over here and send. The structure is important. So if the structure isn't correct, then when I send this, it won't work. Because initially, over here, where the question mark is, I had a slash, which totally ruined my or actually I had it, I think, behind it, which this ruined the script. It wouldn't work. I couldn't figure out why. It was literally just a matter of deleting that, and then it made its request. This information, just so that it's not confusing, I'm gonna delete this out of here, so that it makes sense. Here it is. So the only thing that really matters for this particular job is the job number and the project ID. Now, without those things, you're patching nothing. If you don't have the job number, if you don't have the project ID, it won't know what project to go to. So what you do, it's kind of a combination of things. If you want to automate and patch a whole bunch of projects at once, you need the project number or the project ID, and you can't just go through every single project and get that information, or manually. You definitely could. It's just would be incredibly tedious. So something you would do to get that information is do a GET request. You would get, which I have. Oh, I have it as a Python script because you have to loop because you can only make so many requests, or you can only in your responses you can only get so much back in your responses. So you have to make requests, give it an offset, make multiple requests. And so I've got a Python script that does that, and I'll show that in the future. But what I do is I'll make that request. It'll give me back a database that I can use another Python script to read from, and then it reads the list of project numbers and the a list. Well, in that example, there was no job numbers, so I read the list of, or I got all the projects that didn't have an existing job number, and then had placed the correct project number in all of them, and then just read that list in, and then I just created variables inside of Python for the project number and the job number, and then I had it loop through and change the variable based off of the index. So if the index of the data frame. So the data frame starts at 0, which would give you the first project ID, the first job number, and then it loops through and goes 0, 1, 2, all the way through the list, going through each project, each job number, placing the correct job number per project. And it all starts with Postman. So you use Postman, and you take this tool and kind of create it, test it, and then you can quickly port this information over to a Python script, which is just, if you click on this button over here, it'll open up a dialog, and you can choose from a variety of languages, and then you just jump that over to Visual Studio Code or PyChart, whatever the tool you use. Jump it over there, and you can start to develop a little application or something, or a little script that you can just run that'll do something like a Git or patch, whatever. So some of the resources, I think are incredibly helpful. We've got the post here that I used about, I think, 5 or 6 months ago. It's incredible because it kind of outlines. It was incredible when I first saw it because I was looking everywhere for resources. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Found this. This really got me started. Understanding, okay, I need an app. I need, this is what I need to do to get that. I need to get that into BIM 360. I need to use, what Postman was. How do I use Postman? How do I actually make those posts? So go through this, check it out. It's fantastic. It'll give you everything. Oh, and then finally, how to get that into Power BI. I personally use Python just because I don't necessarily need to visualize it in Power BI. But what he does here is he kind of goes through this to get it into Excel. Or actually, I'm not totally sure if he does this. I think I did that to get it into Excel, but you can see here he did some visuals with Power BI, which is something I didn't do. But you can definitely go through that, and if you want to quickly see all the different users. I can't remember the exact example he used. Maybe it was projects, but check this out. This will give you a great premise. It'll give you a great starting point, and all the stuff that I discussed through this will make a lot more sense if you haven't done a lot of these yet or done anything. Check this out. Go through it. You'll get a whole bunch out of it. Finally, this is the BIM 360 API. This is the actual project patch request that I set up in Postman. So this is the documentation for that. This is everything that you would need to know. The only patch I really made was for the job number, which you can see here. You can pick and choose the values you want to update. So I could, I think I updated 150 projects when I ran that for my firm, and what I could have also done was update like a variety of other information if that was necessary. So I could have grabbed all these parameters and then updated them all at once. But for my case, it was just job number. But you can see there's a lot of things you can quickly update. If you have like an Excel sheet that has all like the updated job numbers or contract types, you can get all the information updated, within a second. And then this is the response. So it shows you what the response would be after it pushes that information. So it'll show you like what the response is, what's, you know, the possible values are, stuff like that. And you can see, you know, examples of different parameters. And then down here is an example request. This, I don't make requests. My requests do not look like these. I have no idea how to. I think this is in JavaScript. I don't know, but I don't. I use Python or you know, I use Postman and then Python. Does not look like this. So this was not helpful. The only thing that was really helpful is this kind of understanding. It kind of gives you an idea of like what the structure needs to be for that URL. And then down here, it will be the response you get back is something like this. It looks just like this. If you do a whole bunch of projects, you'll get a whole bunch of responses, but this is what you see. This is not what I used in mine. So this was really confusing when I first started out. You know, what really made that helpful was in Postman, I could just quickly, you know, port that information over to Python, and I didn't have to do anything. It just generated the code for me. I didn't show you that, just kind of show you the button because when it generates, it'll show a whole bunch of confidential things I can't share. So I'll figure out how to get around that so I can actually show you. But keep it in mind that if you do things in Postman, you can quickly generate that stuff into a variety of different languages. Anyways, this is what I've got. I'll be doing more Forge stuff or just showing different examples and how to set that up and different patch requests and showing some of the outputs. I've got to really figure out how to, try to keep the confidential stuff from, showing. So I've got to figure out how to work around that. I'll also show some Python scripts that I put together that get around like some of the issues you'll run into with GET requests, because you can make a whole bunch of GET requests, but you only get a response back of so much. So how do you loop through if you have 1,000 users? If you could only get 100 back in every response, how do you loop through that multiple times so you don't have to make duplicate a bunch of code or make in Postman change the numbers every time before, just make one script that runs through a whole bunch of it and then appends the information and outputs a CSV. So I'll show you how to do that. Also, if you're familiar with BIM 360, there's a beta tool that's out there that actually dumps a lot of this information out. That's great, but the idea behind this is to hopefully share like how can we build application to pull out the necessary data that I care about, or what you care about. How do we pull that out, and then how do we leverage that in a smart way? And there's so much you can do with this. I mean, you could take being able to patch stuff means that you could start to or post and patch things. That means that you can start to build applications around this. And one more thing before I jump off, I wanted to mention that there's the BIM 360 API. That's one of the APIs. That's probably the one I use the most when interacting with BIM 360. The other one is, if we go to documentation, there's a data management, and it'll tell you access data across BIM 360 teams, Fusion, storage. So there's just some generic information here, but this one is just to extend your data to other platforms. But there is some useful things in here. So if we jump into that, there's some stuff about data management. It'll show you projects. You can get information here. You can look at folders. I want to look into this and figure out what this means. Can we create folders in the data management? Can we automatically create the necessary folders? So this is something I want to look into, but you can see there's a variety of good information in here that you can mess around with and see. There's just different GET requests, different POST requests, just different things. But these are the two main APIs, the data management and then the BIM 360 API. The rest of these APIs are there are other things to interact with the Forge platform. You can build your own viewer in Forge, or some design automation stuff in Forge. I'm hoping after I really nail these two down that I'll jump over to design automation. I think there's some really powerful stuff in that. But anyways, hopefully you liked the video. I'm going to put some more stuff together, some more refined things to talk about and to share. But this is just to give you an idea, to show you the different requests. If you need any help on any of this stuff, feel free to reach out. And then if you want to like, comment, share, feel free to do that. Subscribe if you want to see more. I appreciate you watching, and thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next one.